In 1967, a psychologist named Martin Seligman put a dog in a box. The box had two sides. One side delivered electric shocks, the other didn't. All the dog had to do was jump over a small barrier to escape. It never did. It just lay down and took the pain. The dog wasn't stupid. It wasn't broken. It had learned something far more disturbing, that nothing it did would ever make a difference. Your brain learned the same lesson, and you never even noticed. Here's what nobody tells you about your mind. It is not built to make you happy. It is not built to make you accurate. It is built to keep you alive. And for most of human history, keeping you alive meant one thing above everything else: finding the threat before the threat found you. So your brain became the most sophisticated threat detection system ever produced by evolution. And like every system built for survival rather than truth, it makes mistakes. Specific, predictable, measurable mistakes. And one of its most common errors is this: it invents enemies that were never there. The structure responsible for this is called the amygdala. Two small, almond-shaped clusters of neurons buried deep in the center of your brain, one on each side. The amygdala doesn't think, it doesn't reason, it pattern matches. It takes incoming information from your senses and runs it against a library of everything that has ever hurt you, threatened you, or made you feel unsafe. And when it finds a match, even a partial one, even a vague one, it fires fast. The whole process takes about 12 milliseconds. That is 5 times faster than conscious thought. By the time you are aware that something feels wrong, your amygdala made that decision a quarter of a second ago. You are not reacting to the world, you are reacting to your brain's interpretation of it. This would be fine if the amygdala were accurate. It isn't. In 2001, neuroscientist Joseph LeDoux at New York University published research showing that the amygdala operates on a principle he called better safe than sorry. It is asymmetric by design. The cost of missing a real threat, death, is so much higher than the cost of inventing a false one, embarrassment, wasted energy, a slightly elevated heart rate, that the system was never calibrated for precision. It was calibrated for speed, which means it fires at shadows. It fires at tones of voice that remind it of something old. It fires at a facial expression that matches a pattern it learned before you were old enough to question it. And every time it fires, it tells you the same thing. This person is dangerous. This situation is a threat. Trust nothing here. And here is where it gets stranger. Because the amygdala doesn't just detect threats, it remembers them. Every time it fires, it strengthens the neural pathway that caused it to fire. The more it flags something as dangerous, the more sensitized it becomes to that exact pattern. Psychologists call this fear conditioning. You might know it as the reason you still tense up around people who remind you of someone who hurt you years ago. The original person is gone. The threat they represented is gone, but the pattern your amygdala learned from them is still running, still scanning, still finding matches in faces that have never done anything to you at all. This is what Martin Seligman was really documenting with that dog. He called it learned helplessness. But the deeper finding was something else: that a mind exposed to a threat long enough doesn't just respond to that threat, it generalizes. It starts seeing the threat everywhere, in situations where it isn't present, in people who have never been anything but neutral. The dog stopped trying to escape not because the shocks were still coming. It stopped because its nervous system had restructured itself around the assumption that they always would be. Your nervous system does the same thing, quietly, without asking. By 1980, psychologists had a clinical name for the most extreme version of this: post-traumatic stress. But what the research kept revealing was that you didn't need a dramatic trauma to trigger the mechanism. Repeated small experiences of unpredictability, criticism, or social rejection were enough. A parent whose approval was never quite certain, a friendship that turned without warning, a period of your life where you couldn't read the room and paid for it. Small things, ordinary things, enough to teach your amygdala that people are unpredictable, that safety is temporary, that the calm before the storm is just the storm being quiet for now.
And so it builds a model. Your brain constructs what psychologists call an internal working model, a template, built from your earliest experiences of how people behave, what they want from you, and whether they can be trusted. And here's the part that should unsettle you. Once that template is built, your brain doesn't update it by looking at new evidence. It updates it by finding evidence that confirms what it already believes. Psychologists call this confirmation bias. Your amygdala calls it Tuesday. The enemy your brain invented isn't random. It's a composite, built from every person who ever made you feel small, unsafe, or unseen, assembled into a pattern, and then projected, quietly and constantly, onto the people around you. The colleague who didn't reply to your message isn't ignoring you, but the pattern says they are. The friend who seemed distracted isn't pulling away, but the pattern says they are. The silence in a room isn't hostile, but the pattern, the old,
learned, no longer accurate pattern says it is. Here is what Seligman found when he tried to help the dog. Telling it the shock was gone didn't work. Removing the barrier didn't work. The only thing that worked was physically guiding the dog over the barrier, again and again, until its nervous system slowly learned through direct experience that the old rules no longer applied. The mind does not update its threat models through information. It updates them through experience, through repeated, embodied proof that the expected harm did not arrive. That is a slow process, a deeply inconvenient one. And most people never start it because they never realize the threat they've been defending against isn't in the room with them. It's in the pattern their brain built years ago and never stopped running.